Revere. Collette is the founder and CEO of Open 360, a consultancy that helps organizations build trust, alignment, and human-centered performance. Her session, AI and Human Intelligence, Equipping Leaders for the Future of Work, explores how leaders can embrace AI without losing empathy, judgment, and trust that make leadership truly human. Get ready to learn how to balance AI insights with human judgment and keep communication people focused in an AI-driven world. Please join me in welcoming Collette. Welcome, Collette.
Thank you. Thank you so much. What a beautiful introduction. I'm really happy to be here today with you all. I have such respect for Naveen, and I'm glad to be talking with you. So I need to share my screen. Is that right? Here we go. Let's see. Pull up the right one here. Okay. You're about to see my whole screen. How does this look? Can you see it?
Yes, Collette. Please, you
Okay.
Yes, you
Great.
can go ahead. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you. So, honestly, Christine and I could have been sharing notes for the first half of my presentation because it's got some similarities with hers. But we're really going to be talking about how to combine AI and human intelligence, and in particular, equipping leaders for what the future looks like, for the future of work. Just to give you a little information about me, I do have the company Open 360. I have 20 years of experience in psychology and organizational development. So that's kind of where my mind is coming from. And I'm focused on humanizing and improving the effectiveness of leadership and performance management. And we have a real opportunity here with using AI to create a standard for the type of leadership that we've needed all along. Now command and control just isn't going to work, and we have even more reason to help equip our leaders to be really excellent at what they do. Okay, so I'm going to take you through a scenario. You are a product manager at a major online marketplace. It's peak holiday season coming up. The AI pricing engine recommends dynamic price increases on high demand products. This is a proven revenue booster. It's worked in the past, but customer care data shows that rising complaints about fairness and brand trust from previous price spikes is not good. So your gut says hold prices steady. The AI engine recommends these prices. I would love to hear from you in the chat. What do you choose? Oh, you're seeing me, sorry. I can't see the chat, but maybe you guys can share that with me.
Sure, we have a response here. Someone said they'll use their gut.
Okay. So I think this is the struggle with using AI, and this is where Christina and I have similar ideas about this, is that the question is, do I use the data in front of me, or do I use my own judgment as a leader? What's the right answer here? Oh, yeah, you go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, we can see someone said AI, another person said, I think it should always be a combination of the two. Another person, the same thing, said both. If I feel something, I can use AI to help me have an idea. Both. Yeah, I think everyone's good for both.
And I finally figured out how to see my chat without messing up my screen. So
Awesome.
yes, great. Well, so in this situation, this was a real life situation, but what we're dealing with is if you trust the AI, you're going to maximize the short-term revenue, but risk long-term trust loss. If you trust your instincts, you'll forego the immediate profit and the information that says this is what you should do, but potentially strengthen loyalty. And what they chose, leadership sided with the AI and boosted prices. Their revenue rose 18% that quarter, but net promoter score dropped 27 points and brand sentiment fell sharply. The following year, customer retention declined, wiping out the short-term gain. So it's complex, right? AI is optimized for one metric, which was revenue, and leaders had to weigh multidimensional consequences like trust, loyalty, lifetime value. And so this is where we have to make choices. Which do we trust more? It's very easy if they both align, right? If the data matches your instinct, awesome. It doesn't matter. But today, in this moment, if you were to choose, what do you trust more? Do you trust AI more and the data that you're receiving there? Or as a leader, do you trust your instinct more? I would love to know. Just let me know in the chat. We have one vote for AI. AI. Okay, both. AI. I'm on the instinct team for the moment, but I really love to use AI, and it's a beautiful thing when it supports what my instinct already is. But I think I'm still in the space where I go with my instinct. So this is why leadership, the importance of leadership is not going away. AI is changing how we do work, but it can't replace what makes leaders really important. And that is somebody who gains trust and is trustworthy, somebody who has empathy, and somebody who uses good judgment. So there's some gaps that are being identified through just people using this technology right now, and what's missing from their experience. So we have three different gaps. The first is the confidence gap. So most HR leaders are using AI in recruiting, performance management, and very few, about a third, feel confident that their teams can effectively blend technology and human insight. So even at the upper levels of the organization, there's a confidence gap. There's a trust gap with employees from how are we going to use the data that we get from AI? How is that going to impact them? Will it enhance bias? That's a real concern. Will they be reduced to a number instead of a human being? So that gap is showing up. And then the skills gap. So automation is projected to impact almost half of all work hours in the next 5 years, but only 8% of organizations believe they have the skill to do that really well. So these three gaps, confidence, trust, and skills, are a real area where leaders have the opportunity to bridge that gap for the people that they work with and the organization. So I know we're hammering this home today, but we all know it, right? There's risks on both sides. So if you lean too far in any direction, you risk losing your opportunity to make your very best choice. So on one side, we have AI only leadership where every decision is driven by metrics, algorithms, and dashboards. And that level of information that we can receive right now is incredible, but without context, it's dangerous. And so this is where AI only, just looking at numbers, just looking at information without using judgment, is incredibly risky. And then we have human only leadership where, we have leaders who just want to cling to their instinct and tradition and the things that they're most comfortable with. And as human only leadership in particular likes to kind of make decisions behind closed doors and have a lot of authority and control. But the danger in that is that you don't use all the information at hand to make really good decisions and you lose. Blockbuster, I don't know how many of you know of Blockbuster or remember Blockbuster, but it was an old video store back when we had the tapes. And they, when Netflix was coming up and using the data from their customers, Blockbuster doubled down on their VHS tapes. They were like, no, this is what we're doing. We're good at this. We're known for this. And we see how that worked out. Nobody goes to a Blockbuster anymore. So that's the risk when it comes to human only leadership. And what we're really looking for is somewhere in between. A company that does this really well is Zappos, where they have AI chatbots that can handle routine customer concerns, but they also have such a great reputation for empowering their people to step in with empathy, nuance, creative solutions for their customers. So the result is higher customer satisfaction because the easy problems get fixed quickly, and deeper loyalty because the hard problems have a real human touch. So I'm going to ask you a couple more questions. I really want to hear about your experience. I'm going to ask on both sides, but first I want to know, can you think of a time when data actually impaired a decision in your own work? I'm going to be quiet for a second and let you think. I'd love for you to share in the chat. So an example of when data impairs a leadership decision is that the earlier example that we had with the revenue and increasing the price. Again, data is only as good as the context that comes with it. And so sometimes data can be misleading because you don't have all of the information. This is why we have bias in our data because we're gathering data, but there are things behind that we have to understand and take into account in order to make really great decisions. And so that's an important piece. And it is possible that data can impair a decision as a leader. So how about a time when data improved a leadership decision in your own work? That feels easier, huh? I think we've all had this experience where now we're using generative AI. We're able to get lots of information, consolidate that information. I mean, it just makes it easy. Writing reports, analysis for CVs. Exactly. We all use it to help. But I think it's really important to keep in mind that context piece is always there. And you don't know until you know, right? You make your decisions and then later you find out about the context behind it and what was really there. But it's important to remember that good data is great, but it will never replace contextually sound decisions. So our job as leaders is not picking a side. Am I going to be pro AI or pro my own intuition? But it's about learning a new set of hybrid skills. And so these are 5 important shifts that leaders need to make to be really successful now. And I mentioned before, these are changes and shifts that leaders have needed to make for a long time. Maintaining control, hoarding information, that sort of leadership hasn't worked for a while, but now the cost of that kind of leadership is going to just be greater and greater as we move into this new space. So from decider to sense maker, and we'll go over these in detail in a minute, but from the person who makes all the decisions to the person who gives context to the people who work for them and allow everyone to weigh in on the best choice and the best decision. From the manager of tasks, the person that makes sure every little thing gets done. Some of us might say micromanager, to the multiplier of talent, to helping their people use the information and tools available to do their very best work. From privacy, and making decisions behind closed doors, making decisions as a leader without giving information about why that decision was made and the context behind it. That's no longer acceptable. People expect transparency, some sort of information about why you're making these choices, how you got there. And this not only helps with trust, but it also helps employees learn your judgment and learn to apply that judgment on their own when it comes to looking at information. From hero to host. So this is kind of the old school classic leader who wants to come in and be the boss and be in charge of everything and make all the decisions. And that's not how it's going to work anymore. So leaders need to be a host. They need to facilitate the work from their employees. They need to make the work easier. They need to guide and mentor. That's the sort of leadership we need. And then from static expertise to lifelong learning, because all of us have a big learning curve here as the pace of change has just skyrocketed now with technology. So let's just dig a little deeper into each one, from decider to sense maker. And this is a message I've heard all morning, is that AI can only inform. It can't lead. So what this looks like in practice for leaders is really thinking out loud in front of your employees and helping them learn your judgment and learn how to think things through. What does this data mean for our people, for our customers, for our mission? Really digging for that context behind the data. Using AI as a partner in decision making, but not as a replacement for your own judgment. And translating those complex ideas or lots of information into a clear direction that connects to your team's or your business's overall purpose. From manager of tasks to multiplier of talent, AI will do the busy work, which is awesome. It's great. And leaders can then spend their time unlocking the best in their people. So it means shifting from monitoring how long you're working. Is your yellow button showing on your teams because you haven't wiggled your mouse in a minute, or is it your green? Like, we're not doing that anymore. Okay, we don't need to do that. So leaders really need to shift that focus to mentoring, coaching, and guiding their teams. Privacy versus transparency. We talked about this. Trust is incredibly important, and it's something that's missing in many organizations. A pretty recent study from Gartner shows that I think about 40% of people trust their companies, and about 50% of companies trust their people. So it's not just a one-sided thing. There is a major break in trust in the workplace. And in order to mobilize people behind these fast changes, this lots of information that they don't necessarily have time to completely integrate and understand, it requires trust. And so it's incredibly important for leaders to share their thought process about why they're making the choices they are and sharing their judgment, involving employees in conversations and inviting dissent and alternative ideas to make sure that you're making the wisest choice, providing radical clarity to eliminate confusion and foster that alignment within teams. And next is hero to host. Again, leaders are not, it's not the Superman leader anymore, where I'm in charge, I tell you what to do, I make the rules, and you just do it. Nobody's going for that. It doesn't work. So leadership is not about being the smartest person in the room. It's about creating the space for others to shine, truly leading other people. So this means creating conditions for cross-functional collaboration and shared ownership. This really means elevating the people around you and allowing them to use their talent to contribute to the team. It is not about you as the leader, it's about your team. Inviting different opinions and dialogue to help strengthen your team's decisions. And then building an inclusive team where everyone feels like they have a voice. And last, the static expertise versus lifelong learning. None of us are really experts anymore. I mean, we're experts in our little field, but there's so much we have to learn. And this is how it is now going to be. I'm a change management practitioner, and change management used to be an event. With this technology, it is no longer an event. It is a routine. This is how our life will be now. And so we have to show that from the highest levels in organization, what it looks like to do well here. And first is investing in your own education and training and literacy, not assuming that you can just apply, oh yeah, let's just do that upgrade on our HCM and get the AI package. No, you really have to know what you're doing with it to do it ethically and to do it well. Celebrating learning, sharing what you're learning, sharing your own failures, all of it is learning. And then building a culture where growth is expected at every single level, from the top down, from the bottom up. So the future of leadership is the need for leaders is not going away. It's only becoming more essential, because imagine a future where we have all of this information coming at us at work and no one to guide, no one to make sense of it, no one to help us understand how to apply it. Leaders are incredibly important in this new space. So I'd love to hear from you. I have another scenario that I'd like for us to go through, both from the old leader perspective and the new leader perspective. So let's just say your company just rolled out a new AI platform to analyze team performance and suggest ways to improve efficiency. And the AI recommends consolidating 2 departments with overlapping functions, a move that could cut costs by 20%, but might mean significant role changes or layoffs. Okay, so I'm going to, let's see if I can do this. I'm going to put that in the chat because I want to hear what you have to say about it from these 3 perspectives. So the first perspective, goodness gracious, it's like I've never done a presentation before. I haven't used Zoom in so long. I switched to Teams. Okay, so question number 1 is, with this scenario that I just posted in the chat, how would a leader still operating from the old model handle this situation? So the leaders getting data that they could make a change, consolidate departments, cut their staff and costs by 20%. So the old leader is the decider, the person who's in charge and just going to make this choice. The manager of tasks, this leader makes choices in private and doesn't share their thinking with other people. They're the hero, the one who is elevated above everyone else on their team. And they're not concerned so much about lifelong learning. So I know I'm asking for a lot of participation, but I'd love to hear what you have to say. Old leaders certainly would sacrifice people and implement AI. That's right. They would implement changes irrespective of the potential of staff losses. Yeah, I believe that too. And I wonder if, I'm just thinking out loud as I'm reading your answers, but I wonder if it's goes back to that, just the static expertise of not really being informed about the consequences of making choices that are only aligned with the information that's in front of you. So my next question is, I bet you can guess it. How would a leader embodying the new shift approach it differently? So a leader who is open, transparent, shows people their thought process, multiplier of talent, transparency, somebody who's a mentor and a guide and invested in showing their failures and also showing their learning. Staff consultation and communication forums, using empathy. That's right. And these shifts might seem obvious for us, but I can share my experience. The companies that I'm working with, there are people at the highest levels who are using this old model. And so it is a really tough shift when you have executives who are not wanting to budge from the old model, but other leaders understanding that this is what it needs to look like now. It's incredibly difficult. So it's not just about knowing the shift that has to happen, but it's about making this shift happen in the culture that you're in, which may or may not be supportive of these changes. And then last, what language, behaviors, and decisions would signal the shift? So for the new leader, what would it be? What would it look like in a team meeting with this new leader? How would their team feel? What would the leader be doing? How would they be managing the conversation around this from that perspective? Invite and maximize input. We use the word we, exactly. Yeah. Create a sense of team. Old leader would be obey before complain, relaxed and confident. Yeah, absolutely. And I'll say, with my psychology background, when I came into organizations, I quickly realized that leaders and teams are struggling with the same thing that most people were coming to therapy for: communication, self-awareness, relationships, boundaries. And so for many leaders, they want to do better from my experience, but they don't want to raise their hand and say, I need help, because that feels incredibly risky. That feels like you may not trust me as a leader anymore, or I might lose my job, or I might not keep going on the career path. And so it's a really sad situation where leaders who even want to improve don't feel like they can be vulnerable enough to share what they need help with. And that's where, with my company and what we're trying to do, is really help support leaders and companies and allowing people not to be perfect so that they can then learn how to be good, you know? Okay, so I know this was supposed to be a 45-minute session, but I'm pretty much done. So we may have a little extra time. But I do want to hear from you one last time. I promise this is the last. I want to hear, what are you going to do? Because all of us on this call can do something to improve the path for leaders, to improve the situation for employees. What are you going to do to help shape the future where you are? And I see we have a question. I'm going to wait for a second to answer that, because I really do want to hear, what people's thoughts and ideas are about just one thing that they can do today, this week, to start making an impact, communicating more, advocating. Yes. Yeah. Working with integrity and transparency, because integrity is good, but without the transparency, you're not teaching other people how to do that. And empathy. Yeah. I love it. Thank you. All right. So I know we do have a question, and that's, and I might need some help. Adam, I might need some help with understanding the context of this question, but it's, how do we combine the two aspects of leadership? So, oh, do you mean the old and the new?
Yeah, that's the question. Because I think from my perspective, I feel that sometimes both are needed, and sometimes I feel the new generation sometimes chastise the old generation, thinking that how their style of leading is archaic, even when it comes to AI. But I have been in situations where I have come to understand that not everything about the old way of leading is always bad. I think I'll
Yeah.
use an example as my mother. Let me use it because she's the closest person that comes to mind. I am into remote learning, and she is very, very, what's the best word? She's always cautious with remote work. And her
Yeah.
mindset, remote work is okay, fraudulent. Yeah, I think that's the best word. We call it 419 in Ghana, meaning it has to do with fraud. You can be jailed. And so even up to now, she's not, yes, I see the laughing emoji. Even up to now, she's not like, it's not that she's not in support, but she's like, this job you're doing, be careful. I'm not okay with it. In as much as I try to explain to her, but I get where she's coming from. So that's why this question comes from, that in what situation can we, take from each aspect of it, whether it is old way of how people lead or new, even when it comes to our bosses.
Yes.
We analyze the situation before we, put a Gen Z, this is the new way of doing things, like that kind of
Right.
thing, where we are sort of fond of doing, pushing the old
Yeah.
as saying it is a cake and the new is what is in. So that is basically a bit expansion of the question I was trying to ask.
Love this, and thank you so much for that extra. I I would love to meet your mom. She sounds like a trip, but I know exactly what you're talking about. So, I think the thing that came up for me when you were speaking about it is the word compassion, because we can understand why people do the things they do, right? And from my experience, it's leaders who are the most insecure about their leadership, who are worried that they're not doing a good job, who come across, but they're so afraid to be vulnerable because that doesn't feel like leadership. So they come across incredibly hard, incredibly confident, and deep down they're just like hanging on and wondering how long they're going to be able to make it this way. And so I think the old way has passed, because the context behind the old way has passed. It used to be that we didn't have information flowing like we do now, and um, annual reviews were fine, because over the course of a year in the 1970s, not a lot was going to change in your job. And so if that's how you were coming up, the old way of leadership actually worked. It makes sense. But because of the changes in our environment, because of everyone's access to information, there is just a different expectation now. It's not realistic to think that, oh, I can get on the internet and find out whatever I want, but at work I have to rely on my boss to tell me. That doesn't play out anymore. But I think that we can have compassion for the leaders who are having trouble shifting, because they don't know. They're afraid. They have been successful as this old kind of leader, or at least in their mind, relatively successful. And making the leap feels impossible, honestly. So I think it's a hard question. My work is really helping organizations be open to this idea of allowing leaders to ask for help, to show vulnerability, to teach people how to grow through their own growth and their own showing people the failing and the learning and the growing and just changing what we expect. I think that's really the only way to be successful. But if you're personally dealing with it, I think it's just trying to have that compassion and understand why somebody might be struggling and holding on so tight to something that is really just not going to work anymore. And you can't change another person. So at the end of the day, you can only change your perspective around it.
Okay, Colette, thank you so much for that answer. But
Yeah.
I think as you were speaking, another question popped out in my mind. Looking at the fact that many of us are from different parts of the world, and sometimes our environment sort of educates us on how we work, in a sense that something may work in the US and not work here in Ghana. So
Yes.
especially with that, if you are someone in, let's say, a different part of the world where all this information that you are giving us is not something we are able to implement as leaders. No, how do we go around it? I think maybe, okay, yeah, how do we go around it, or how do we implement it? Because here in Ghana, I would say that there are certain aspects of leadership that is difficult for them to do. That's the reason why I wrote obey before you complain. It is something that is like, when it comes to the leaders, it is obey before you complain. In a sense that
Yes.
I'm the leader, you're not supposed to talk. When did you come in? I'm the boss. What do you mean by that? And sometimes you may be the leader, but you find yourself doing the same thing. I'm the
Yes.
leader. The report must be this way. What do you mean by AI? Go back and learn, go and do that. Like, I'm sort of describing some of the things
Yeah.
in my country. So I'm trying to see how we can implement all that you've given us, even though we may not be in the same like cultural sphere. So that's my question.
That's such a great question, because it calls out a limitation of mine and what's on here, because truly my experience and my knowledge is really focused around what's happening in the US, where we have a lot of resistance, but people are afraid to outwardly resist. So they'll just nod their head and say, yeah, we're going to change this. And then they never do. So it's kind of the same. But I hear what you're saying is that in other cultures, it's more appropriate to say, absolutely not, get back to work, what are you thinking, to respond differently. And I don't know the answer to that. I so wish I had a good answer for you. I have kind of this is what happens when I get a little extra time, y'all. I have this kind of going back to basics that I do whenever I get stuck with a communication issue. And that is really understanding that our families are our first classrooms. And so whether we're from another country, whether we're just from a different family, we grow up internalizing things that our parents did, things that our family did. And that's what we know. That is our way of communicating. And until we, and so then we become adults and we become professionals and we become leaders. And somewhere along the way, people think we have learned some communication skills that we haven't, because we only got what we got from our families. And now we're thrown in an environment with other people, totally other expectations, and having to navigate that and figure out how to do it. And then Adam, the cultural component on top of that, that says this is right, but this is not right. That's a whole nother layer. And that's the one I don't have a solution for, is that cultural piece. But I'll say the personal piece is, I haven't met a single person who gave their family communication a 10 out of 10. Like, it wasn't great for anybody. And so until you think about it differently, until you really become aware of what you internalize and try to make different decisions as an adult, you don't have a choice. You're just on autopilot. You're just following what you know. And so there's this really important step of thinking things through and really making the choice that's right for you. Do I want to continue doing this, or do I want to do something different? And that feels to me like it's within your control. But this cultural component, gosh, listen, I'm from the US and we're a mess right now. So I don't know how to fix it. I don't know how to fix it. But I think that you all are well equipped to try to figure out how to do it from where you are.
Thank you so much, Collette. So I think
Yeah.
what I got from the information you've given me is, I guess you can't solve everything, and you can't sometimes change the things around you. If you are someone under a leader, you may not necessarily be able to change them, but you can take the information from here and take other informations and learn along, and just sort of take the information and readjust to better work for yourself. So your boss may say, I'm not into AI, but I don't think they can take your laptop and check if you are using AI to aid you in your reports. And I guess also as a leader, there's nothing that stops you from learning from other cultures, even if it is not something in your culture. So long as at the end of the day, it helps improve the company dynamic. So I guess that is or the understanding I gained from everything you've given us so far.
Yes, that is really beautifully said. Yes, thank you for that. And if you're interested, this LinkedIn QR code here, I'm constantly posting rants like that on LinkedIn and other information about, how we can get better at this and how we can do this well and how we can give ourselves grace and give other people grace in the process. And so if you're interested, please connect with me there. I'd love to just meet you and connect. Thank you for the questions and for all of your participation.
All right. So thank you so much, Collette. That was a really, really amazing session. Thank you I can see a lot of engagement going on in the comment section, and that's very, very good. Thank you. So these are the QR codes. If you'd like to connect, just reach out to Collette, and she will be sure to answer you on LinkedIn or other places. Yeah. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank
I
you
think
so
we
much.
still have, yeah. So I